car fans. Welcome to the Muscle Car Modeler. My name is Raul, and this week I'm going to feature the completed build of my Miami Vice Ferrari Testarossa here. This old monogram kit, which as I had mentioned before, I just stumbled upon this kit at a really good price and decided to buy it because it is one that I built a long time ago as a kid, well, teenager, and I enjoyed it and I just had fond memories of building it. So I wanted to relive some of those memories while building this car. So I went ahead and built it. It's kind of a quick build right out of the box. No real modifications or anything. Just built it and enjoyed reading about the actual car. So when it came to the actual show, Miami Vice, I really didn't watch the show. I'd seen a couple episodes, not something I really watched. It went on from 85 through 1990, and fans of the show will know that they had this Ferrari, which was a real Ferrari, and then they also had the Daytona Spider, which was a replica. And Enzo Ferrari had seen the show and was pretty upset, and I was reading that he had sued the manufacturer and tried to get the car canceled and taken off the air, and he was not happy about the portrayal of his cars, and it wasn't one of his cars, it was a fake car. So he was not happy about that. So I guess there was a lawsuit and a couple of lawsuits where he was trying to prevent that and put a stop to it. But in the compromise, they decided that they would provide 2 Ferrari Testarossas, 85 models, to the show, and they gave them black cars. And I thought that was kind of odd that the show would paint them white. The main reason was there's a lot of night scenes and they wanted the car to really stand out and show. There was another story about that where almost all of the cars that he drove in the show were black, so his character really preferred black cars. And I think Ferrari noticed that because a lot of the vehicles he was using were black besides the Daytona Spider. And I think there was like 4 or 5 other cars that were black in total that he had used throughout the show. But those were the ones that really stood out. So they gave him 2 of them. And then one of the stories was saying that before filming actually began, one of the 2 Ferraris was actually damaged and needed body work and needed to be painted, and they decided, well, let's paint them white and change it up a little bit and be much easier to film it at night. One of them needed to paint anyway, so why don't we just paint both of them, even though Ferrari had provided them in black with the tan interior. And another thing with that, and I guess Ferrari was a little upset about that, was they gave him 2 cars, thought that might be enough, but they had built themselves a 3rd car and did a fiberglass body over a 72 Pantera because the Pantera actually had the same wheelbase as the Testarossa. So they went ahead and built a fiberglass replica, and I guess it kind of stands out during the show as it has different wheels, and the body gaps are a little different and not quite as good because it really stands out in white. But I guess Enzo was not too happy about that, but he kind of understood when at the time these cars were $181,000 cars. They needed quite a bit of maintenance. There was also, I was reading about that these cars had a flaw in them to where when they were doing heavy stunts and spin outs, the car would stall. So something to do with the fuel system, the car would stall. The Pantera didn't do that, and it had nitrous and a few other things to help it really accelerate. So the stunt car did a number of things that the real cars couldn't do, and so they took care of those things with the stunt car. So they kind of let it slide, and at the same time the Pantera and even the I understand it was like under $40,000 to build a Pantera, buying a used one and rebodying it. And even the Daytona Spiders were like $35,000 a piece in the budget, where this car value was $181,000 at the time. So this was big budget for that show, but they didn't have to buy the 2, but they did have to maintain them and take care of them. So let's get the box out of the way, because I mean it's kind of a fun box, and I just built it right out of the directions here. But let's zoom in and get a closer look. Okay, so while building this, I like to read up on my cars and subjects and find some things out. Some of the things that stood out for this that I didn't know. This is an 85 model. I believe it's the first year for the Testarossa, and it has a 4.9 flat 12 engine in it. And it's quite a performer in its own right, but it was extra wide and extra long. It provided more room and was a much more comfortable touring car. But some of the things for 85, and I guess 86s too, have this flying eye mirror, which I always thought was kind of odd, but it's a higher mounted mirror and it's only on the one side. I thought it was kind of odd, but that's what the show had, and that's what the first 2 years were. I understand 85 and 86s have this mirror. 87, they moved the mirror down and then provided a passenger side mirror. And they changed it up just a little bit. And then also reading about the grates here, and which is an iconic style of the Ferraris at the time. But I read it was a compromise, that they really didn't want this. They just wanted a big old scoop there. Some countries it was allowed, and some countries it was not. U.S. was one of those countries where a big scoop like that was not allowed. So they had to have some sort of grill or something to protect it. So not only is this an iconic styling treatment, it was actually a compromise, and it was not part of the original design. But we think of it now, you see it and you immediately think Testarossa, and it just matches the grading and everything on the back. Another one of my questions that I was wondering was that Ferrari emblem in the back. It's black. I noticed on the real car, my reference photos, it's black. And many of the later cars, it's chrome. And especially the 512 TR, which is a later variant of this, that's chrome. And I was just wondering about that. So apparently the first few years it was black, but I couldn't get any real confirmation on that. But many of the really early cars, that was black and just kind of stealth, which kind of seems strange to me. And I'd really like to paint it silver. The instructions tell you to paint it silver, but I decided to follow what was going on in the reference photos and the actual car that exists. Both cars do still exist and are out there, and one of them's been all over YouTube lately. Another question I had were the wheels. I noticed in some of my looking at the photos that there was a yellow emblem in the middle and some did not. And I also noticed that later cars had the lug nuts were exposed. Well, I assumed this was 5 lug and that cap covered everything. Come to find out in reading that it was just one lug nut, and it was a splined wheel, and there are no other lug nuts, and that's how the wheel is held on. And it's torqued down to like 325 foot-pounds, just something crazy to hold that wheel on there. And another thing I found out, because I've seen a number of them with the custom wheels or not the factory wheels, come to find out 85 and I guess some 86s had the TRX Michelin wheels or Michelin tires, which the TRX wheels, they're not your normal 16-inch, they're a metric sizing. They're like 415 millimeter diameter, which is like 16.33 something inches, and super hard to find rare tires to get. And the first of the Testarossas had those. And sometime mid-86 they switched to this same style wheel, but an actual 16-inch wheel. So a lot of people search those wheels out and they pay a premium for them to put the stock wheels on their early Testarossa, but they can get them in the more modern 16-inch. And I'm not really sure if those are reproduced. Later Testarossas with the 5 lug have 18s, and many of them, there's custom wheels that have this lug nut spline setup, single lug nut spline setup, to put 18-inch wheels on them. So that's why I was seeing a number of these with custom wheels on it. And it only makes sense when you can upgrade the wheel and tire package to something that looks a little bit more aggressive, holds a little bit better, and is cheaper than the original stuff, and the availability is much easier to get. So that was some of the things that I was finding interesting while building this. Well, the wheel just decided to come off. I'll have to make sure I glue that on a little better, because I think that's the only one that went on easily. The others took a little bit of effort. But when it comes to building this, it built pretty well. A little finicky getting some things to hold, and I was really having trouble gluing. This part of the rocker is actually part of the chassis. While it makes it easier to paint, it makes it a little bit harder to glue together. But I got her glued together and taken care of. And then painting in here is really difficult. Probably went a little overboard on that, but the car is kind of that way. Some of them you see they're a little bit more body color in there than is portrayed here. And the only real modification I did to this was I engraved this body line a little bit deeper and touched it up with black to make it stand out a little more, because the real car is that way. And then I also stripped the chrome off the wheels because it had like a satin chrome, and I did more of the gunmetal magnesium wheels. The originals were magnesium, and it had a chrome nut cap assembly, so I tried to replicate that there. and many of the black trim. I had to hand paint all of this. Did the two-tone beige interior, which you can see, or hopefully see. You can definitely see it in my other videos. And just a lot of nice work. And the headlights came out really nice, but not the headlights. The marker lights and driving lights. I like how those came out. There's foil behind there to really make them stand out. Airbrushed the black here and here. It's not brushed. Airbrushed that. But all around the windows I had to brush it. I was having problems with the masking tape, wanting to eat the paint. There was no decal here, so I just brush painted that and did a squiggly with a toothpick to kind of replicate that emblem. The underside came out really nice. Didn't really do any strenuous detailing. I just painted it mostly the way the directions say, just a little artistic license. Used the actual license plate that's provided in the kit. It gives you 3 license plates, but this is the one the show actually used on the car, so I did that. You can kind of see the hinges for this piece. This is kind of awkward how this is. It kind of stays up, but it rubs, so it'll stay up all by itself. And then there you can see the flat 12 engine there, which is pretty easy to build and details up fairly nicely. I didn't add any plug wires or do anything, just pretty much followed the instructions on how to paint it, and I just kind of went with that. And then I got the third brake light tucked up way in there, which that's kind of fun to do. And then get the engine cover back down. But I'm really happy with the way this one came out. And it was kind of a quick build for me, but you know, when you got all that white and everything to paint, a little bit of a hassle, especially fingerprints and polish and, you know, stuff getting in the paint. Oh, and the taillights, if you can see them. The black hides them really well. It's really hard to get in there to see them. But really happy with the way those came out. Here's the finished product of this one, and see what you guys think of it and if you enjoyed it. I appreciate it. Thanks you guys for all of your comments and your subscriptions and hitting that like button. I really appreciate it. And you guys, you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next Saturday.